Right now, I'm going to show you how to set up the DJI Ronin RS2 Pro bundle. So I'm going to show you how to set up and balance the gimbal. And for those of you who have the Pro Combo, I'm going to show how to set up the focus and also how to set up the raveneye. We're going to be covering it on both Sony and Canon. The two cameras I have is the Sony a7S III and the Canon 5D Mark IV. Now, the process is going to be the same for just about any camera. The big difference is going to be what cables you plug in and what functionality you get on the camera. Hey Cafe crew, it's Colin Smith here from photoshopCAFE.com, and today we're going to set up the Ronin RS2. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to take the case. I have the Pro Combo here. If you don't have the Pro Combo, the first part of this tutorial will be applicable because we're going to be setting up the gimbal, which is the same for all the gimbals. Then once the gimbal is set up, then we're going to proceed and we're going to set up the follow focus, and we're going to set up the raveneye and the other accessories. So the first thing we want to do is, here is the gimbal itself. Now there's a couple of pieces that we need to attach to it. The first is the battery, which is the grip, and also a tripod. So we're going to start by setting up this tripod. And when we open this, there's two compartments in here. You'll see all the accessories in one part here. We've got cables and all that fun stuff in the other one. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start with the tripod base, and we're just going to pop that down. And this is where we can just kind of build everything from here. Okay, so why don't we attach the handle here to the tripod. Okay, the handle is also the battery. All right, let's grab the gimbal. So the first thing you want to do is take the rubber piece off the bottom. And then you'll see it just slots in here. So we're just going to sit it in there. Just pops in. And you see this little lock. You're going to push that forward to lock it into position. That's nice. Make sure this tripod's nice and tight. All right, so here's our gimbal. There's a lock on each of the three axes here. So what we're going to do is just unlock the three axes just by clicking on them. And then we can pull that up, and we're just going to kind of put it into position. So let's just lock these down. And if you pull the lock towards the gimbal, it locks it. So this is our basic position that we're going to set up. And now we're going to put the camera on here. So the camera we're going to mount today is going to be the Sony a7S III with a Tamron 17-28. All right, so we're going to take the base plate, and you'll see with the base plate there's this little wing nut. So just put the wing nut into the base plate. So then we flip the camera over, and then we're just going to screw in this base plate. Okay, here's the mount. And the way to mount this is with the gimbal, the back of the gimbal pointing towards yourself. Take this. This is the area where the camera is going to go. That's going to go in the front. So take this area and push it in towards you, and that'll just snap into position. Now just take the lever and just pull it just to lock it in temporarily. Great. We're almost there. Now we're going to take the camera, and then we just slide the camera in, pull the lever across the back to lock it, and now it's in position. So basically we've got that set up. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is we need to balance this gimbal. And we need to balance each of these axes. And the reason we do that is it'll give us smoother movements, it'll avoid the motors overheating, and it's just very important to make sure we balance those. Now what you might want to do is connect the cable. The big difference here between the Canon and the Sony is the cable. Okay, so there's lots of cables that come with this, so you want to make sure you use the right cable. And the one we're using here is a USB-C to Sony multi for the Sony camera. So why don't we just pop open the side here. Okay, so we plug in the multi here. And then we want to plug it into the gimbal. So if you look on the side of the gimbal, at the front here, there's a little piece that we can pull off. And then we're going to attach this. So the camera control is going to go to the top. So when we turn this on and we balance the gimbal, it's going to give us control. Now on the Sony all we're going to have control over is the shutter. As far as focusing, we're going to use the mechanical focus in order to do that. So Sony are kind of a little bit tight with their API, so we don't have access to a lot of camera functionality, but having a trigger to be able to shoot the shutter is going to give us what we need. Now, if you were using the Canon camera, you would use the micro USB, you would plug that in to the micro USB slot on the camera, on the Canon, and then of course you would use the same slot there for the USB-C. With Canon, you get more control. You can control the ISO, the shutter speed, and the aperture, as well as control the trigger. And also you can do the electronic focus. So a lot of the lenses, you don't need to have the mechanical focus on there. You can do it from the camera if you're using a Canon. There's a couple of pieces here that we want to take off. There's a little rubber piece here that we use for traveling. It just protects that area there. And then there's a rubber piece over here. Now, if you're not going to be attaching the pieces on the sides, keep this on because this is just protecting those connectors there from the elements, and it's not going to do any harm on there. If we attach things, which we'll do later, we'll take that off. But what we want to do now is we want to balance. Now, no matter what camera you're using, balancing is going to be the same for all of them. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to unlock the top, and you'll notice the camera falls. So the first area I want to balance is essentially where this camera is going up or down. See how it just kind of flops there? As we're going to loosen off this here. Okay, so we want to balance this on there. So we're just going to pull this backwards and forwards till we can feel a good balance. It feels pretty good. Okay, so let's lock that in position. All right, now we want to balance the camera backwards and forwards. So we're going to the second one, we're going to undo this, and this will slide backwards and forwards, or we can use this little wheel. And this wheel is great for a couple of reasons. One, it makes it really easy to just make those minute adjustments. And the second thing is when we tilt it, it doesn't slide backwards and forwards like it does on some other gimbals. All right, so we're going to lock that forward. And we know it's properly balanced when we can move this camera to these different angles and it will stay there. Let's lock that axis. The next one we want to do is our roll. So we're going to take that off. And this is our roll side to side. And we want to balance that. So we're going to loosen it off and just push it over. Okay. Lock it in. Then we're going to take the last one. Let's unlock that. And what we're looking for is a nice side-to-side movement. So it feels it's too heavy there. Sometimes I just support this against my body when I'm doing it. And you want to move it away from the area that the camera is leaning into. Oh, look at that. That's pretty good. Okay, lock that in. All right, we're ready to start it up. Now, one of the things you want to do is unlock all your gimbal. You don't want to start up the motor while you've got any of these locked. And the reason for that is you can damage the motors if you do that. And you know you've got a well-balanced gimbal because you can move it in any position and the camera should stay there. All right, so let's turn it on. We're going to click and hold the power button. It's going to go into position. It'll level it. Then we're going to go into the app. And in the app, we have the option to start calibration. And then it's going to do auto tune. Not that auto tune. All right, we are done. And we just click OK. And at this point here, we can turn the camera on. And now we've got the gimbal all set up. and we're ready to go. Now this is the basic operation. I can hit the record button and it will start and stop recording. And if you were using the Canon camera, you could also control some of the camera settings. And the nice thing about this gimbal is to get up and running, I don't even have to connect to the app. We will connect to the app though, because that gives us additional functionality. But one of the reasons I like this is because of the screen now on the Ronin S2 is you can do everything and you're ready to go, just like that. And the other thing that's nice about this too is, let me just turn this off. With the two-piece camera plate, if I take this camera off, just slide it off here, I can use the camera, I can do whatever I want, and then when I'm ready, I come back, I just put it back on here, lock it in, and then when I bring it back, I don't have to rebalance the gimbal because I didn't remove that plate. All I did is just pulled it apart, took the camera off. Couple of things though when you're balancing, make sure the lens cap is off. If you put any filters or anything like that, put them on first. If you're going to be using the lens hood, make sure that's on. So basically set up the camera how you're going to use it, then balance it, and you're good to go. Okay, once you've got your camera set up, what you need to do is activate your Ronin. And the way to do that is go to the App Store on iOS or to the Play Store on Android, download the Ronin app. Then when you have the Ronin app, you're going to launch it, and it's going to activate your Ronin for the very first time. And then once you've done that, you can use the app if you want, but the nice thing is all the settings on the app are here inside of the screen. So you really only need to connect that one time to get it going. Now there is additional functionality on the app, and it makes it a little easier to do things like tracking and time-lapse and stuff like that. But of course, if you want to do face tracking, you want to do force feedback and some of those other features, you're going to want to connect to the raveneye. Let's look at setting up the raveneye. The raveneye is a wireless transmitter that enables us to transmit the signal to devices such as phones, iPads, etc. And what this also does is it gives us a little bit more control. It gives us control over force feedback, so we can move the phone like this and the camera will move with it. And it also gives us the ability to use virtual joystick as well as change the settings remotely. Okay, so if we look at the raveneye, it has a cold shoe mount. You could be tempted to attach it onto the camera, which of course you could. It might make balancing a little bit more difficult though, because it can get top heavy. If you look in the bottom here, and let me just flip this open, just unlock it, and we'll tilt that. You can see there's a shape there where it's just going to slide right in. Now remember, these antennae are going to go away from the camera, so they're not going to be hitting the gimbal. So you'll want to go that way. It's very easy to remember that because, once again, the antenna can only go one way. Push it into the big hole, slide it back, and it will click into place. Now here's a quick thing about the antennas. If you've got the phone attached to the holder here and you're not really going far, you can just keep those antennas tucked in. If you're using it further away, pull them out, and you may want to experiment. You may want to have one going one way, the other one going the other way. Because a big misconception about these antennae is that people think you point it in the direction you're going, but it's actually the flat edge that receives the signal. So consider that when you set that up on the raveneye. Okay, once you've got it connected, there's two cables we're going to connect. The first one is we want to connect it so it talks to the gimbal, and this will also power it. You can charge it separately through the USB-C, but it will take charge from the gimbal. So we're just using the USB-C connector here that goes on the back. And then we're going to go to the gimbal, and if you remember those settings on the front, let me just quickly unlock this. And the three slots on the front, this is going to go into the bottom slot. And then there's another cable, depending on which camera you're using. Of course, you're going to use a different one. If you're using the Canon, it's going to be the micro HDMI to the micro HDMI, the small HDMI. If you're going to the Sony a7S III, use the other cable which has that to the full-size HDMI. Of course, all these cables come with it. So we're just going to pop open that, and we're going to plug it into the HDMI slot. And then on the raveneye, you'll see there's an HDMI slot on here as well. Okay, we've set up the hardware. We want to connect it to the app. The first thing you want to do though is rebalance the camera. Whenever you add things or take things off the camera, you need to rebalance. And once you balance the camera, what you want to do is you want to unlock all the axes so you can turn it on without damaging the gimbal. So click and hold the power button. Now it's on. Turn on the camera. Now, if you look at the raveneye, you'll see there's a power button there. Right now, it might be just charging. So click and hold the power button, and you'll see it will turn red. And then give it a moment. See there, it turns red, and then it turns blue once it's on. So now it's ready to go. All right, so the next thing we need to do now, and the final thing, is to connect the raveneye to the app. So what we do is we go into the DJI Ronin app, and you'll see an option at the bottom that says connect to raveneye. Turn that on. Give the raveneye permission if you're on the iOS. Then you go back to the settings, and if you're on Android, you just want to go directly to your Bluetooth. You want to turn your Bluetooth on. And then what you're looking for is the gimbal. So there's my gimbal there, the DJI RS. Click on that to connect to the Bluetooth. Now you're going to go back, because what it's done now is it's connected the Bluetooth on the gimbal to the Bluetooth on the raveneye. So now the raveneye is going to take over the Wi-Fi. So what we do is we go back, connect to raveneye, go to our Wi-Fi, turn it on, and then in our Wi-Fi settings now you'll see the raveneye will appear. Tap on it to select it. It will connect. And then we go back to our app. And of course, when the camera's on, now your raveneye is going to connect to the camera. And this is where I can do things like, let me go into the force feedback. Let's turn that on right now. Now, as I move my phone, the camera is going to follow that. It's pretty responsive. All right, and the other option, we turn that off. You can turn on virtual joystick. And then if you enable the virtual joystick, then you can control the camera just by moving the joystick on your screen. You can also change camera settings. If we look here, we're on the Canon. We can go in and we can change some of our settings in here. Just by tapping them, choose different settings. And that is the raveneye, which gives us really good remote control over this camera and the gimbal. And of course, it has the other feature I really love, which is the face tracking. Let me just quickly show you this. If I triple tap on the joystick, the camera will turn around and it will face me. And let me just zoom that out. And so what I can do is, if you can see my phone there, I can draw a little square around my face, and now it's going to track my face. Watch the camera. As I move now, the camera is now moving to track me. Okay, let's look at how to assemble the focus. Now you need the focus for cameras that are not supported electronically, and also for lenses that are not supported. This also works for cinema primes, different things like that. So essentially it uses a mechanical device to change the focus on the camera. So let's look at it right now. These are the pieces. Notice it has a different base plate. So you're going to think about when we put this base plate on the camera, it's going to be on the camera like this. We want the focus coming out the side. So that means we want to attach this piece as such so that the rod can come out on the left side. Now take these small screws, you'll see them, the little Allen screws, and just put those in. And then you're just going to tighten those on there. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to attach the rod. And we might adjust this later, but we're going to tighten down the rod with this other screw, same kind of screw as the two that attach that to the base plate. Then we've got the focus device itself. Now you want to have it pointing up, and you want to make sure that this wheel is going to be pointing into the lens. So when it's like that, we want it to go that way. And we're just going to tighten that up a little bit for now, move it out to the side, and then we'll position it when we're ready. The nice thing about this is because it's on a separate base plate, the whole device attaches on the base plate. So that means you could keep this assembled, and then when you want to do the focus, all you've got to do is just switch out the base plate, and then when you don't want to use the focus, switch it out for the other base plate. Of course, the one golden rule is always balance the camera. When you change anything, rebalance the camera on the gimbal. So you're going to get good at balancing. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to attach this to the camera right now. All right, and see how this just all attaches at once. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to take this piece that looks like it belongs to, you know, taking an oil filter off a car. And you'll notice that the teeth on there match the teeth inside the gear. So what we want to do is we want to wrap this around our focusing ring. So there's our focus ring on the camera on the back. We can take that around, make sure it's nice and tight, and then just snap it into place. And you can see that that will affect the focusing. All right, let's mount the camera. And it mounts just like before. Let's make sure we lock this into position. And now what we want to do is just line this up. So we're going to loosen off the motor itself. Let's slide it across. And we're just going to line it up with the filter. Make sure that we turn it around so this part here is not going to get in the way of the motor. Make sure it's nicely locked in there. And then we're just going to tighten up this arm. Now don't over tighten it and strip the thread on it. So if we just turn this, you can feel, okay, the motor is now turning. That's great. So now we want to attach it. So what we're going to use is a USB-C cable. Let's attach it on here. And then we're going to go onto the front here. This time, we're going to put it in the middle position. Okay, everything is attached. Now you want to rebalance the camera exactly the same way we balanced the camera before. All right, and that's how you know you have a perfectly balanced camera, because it will stay exactly where I put it without moving. Awesome. So once you've got that, make sure you unlock all the axes, turn on the camera, well, turn on the gimbal first. And it'll take a second, turn it on, turn the camera on. Go in here, set the auto tune. Let's just balance this again, the calibration. Okay, and now we have a perfectly balanced camera that's working with the raveneye and also the focus. Now watch what happens with the focus. See the wheel on the front? As I turn that wheel on the front of the gimbal there, it changes the focus on the camera, and I can focus that and do rack focusing, different things like that. Now, if you're using the Canon camera, you can change the settings to use this to change the ISO, shutter speed, aperture, or the mechanical or electronic focus. And if you have the electronic focus working on there, you don't really need to put that on as far as the mechanical focus. But this mechanical focus will mean that I can make any camera focus on this device. Okay, you might have noticed this little rubber piece at the front here. There's two more accessories, and let's have a look at those right now. I'm gonna take this off. These just attach very quickly. One of them is, let's just attach that on here. And then you just tighten this up. And this here attaches, and it enables me to work in briefcase mode. Let me take off the tripod off its mount, put it on here. And now I can go like this. And if I carry it by the handle, now I can go low and go in briefcase mode and get those low shots. So that's what that one does. Is here, and this enables me to mount a mobile device such as a phone on here. And I can turn that around. I can attach my phone on there, and of course I can have it in portrait mode or landscape mode. Let me just tighten that up. And then when I want to use a raveneye with the phone, I can do that. Of Of course, they're interchangeable. I can put the phone on the other side and the handle on this side, depending on how I want to work. So I got control that way, or I can put it the other side. It's reversible. So that's how you set up the DJI Ronin RS2 Pro bundle. So anyway, guys, I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments underneath. If you have any questions, drop them in there too. And if you guys are new here to Photoshop Cafe, first of all, welcome. Consider hitting that subscribe button and you're gonna get new tutorials from me every single week. Turn on those notifications. And by the way, guys, if you like this, smash the like button into dust. And until next time, I'll see you at the cafe.